What's up guys, Ryan here. So today I wanted to make a video talking about how to send international payments for sourcing your FBA inventory. And it doesn't actually have to be for sourcing your FBA inventory. Whatever reason you're making an international payment, this video is going to apply to you. Now, if it's your first time having to make an international payment, you've got options obviously, and it might be a little scary that you don't want to get scammed, or you might just be completely in the blue about not knowing how to approach solving this problem. Depending on what boat you're in, if you're like sending money to a supplier for an FBA product, they most likely have a preferred method of being paid, whether it's like getting paid through Alibaba, depending on the payment size, if it's small, maybe through PayPal, and then in most of the cases, a wire transfer, which they call TT, which I forget what that even stands for, but at least in China, they say T/T a lot. So when I had to send money internationally for my first Amazon FBA product, I actually had my supplier also ship the product for me, and they did it via air. So it cost $1,600 to get it produced and around $800 to have it shipped. And I paid 30% up front, 70% after, and I did it all via PayPal. Now at the time, I was being coached by somebody on how to sell on Amazon because I was going through for the very first time. And that guy's preferred method was to like always use PayPal. And looking back, I mean, it's crazy that if you're trying to run a profitable business, why would you knowingly take a 4% loss? You know, you're adding 4% to your margins because PayPal is going to take a 4% transaction fee, and that's just money that disappears into thin air when you use PayPal. So it's crazy to me to be doing that. But it does give you the peace of mind while you're sending these international payments, that you at least have some buyer protection. Now, I don't know the full extent of the buyer protection because I've never had to call on PayPal to use it, because I've never had any issues with finding reputable suppliers and getting ripped off. But also at the same time, I don't use PayPal that often either. I did it for convenience, which is the biggest pro when it comes to sending money using PayPal. You can do it from the comfort of your own home using a credit card or your PayPal balance, and it's very easy. But my recommended method of sending money online is to use a wire transfer. Now, wire transfers for me, I use Capital One as my bank. I have to physically go to the bank to do one. Now, I talked to BB&T and they told me that you don't actually have to be physically present. They have an online option to do them yourself, which is great if you don't have time in the middle of the day to leave to do wire transfers. But their fees, when I checked, were $65 per wire. And that was kind of absurd to me. That's really high. Capital One charges me $40 per wire, which is still a lot of money, but I at least had the luxury of having a branch right across the street from my day job where I work. Unfortunately, and notice I said had, they are like closing branches left and right and, you know, getting lazy and probably just upping their margins in doing so. So now I have to drive to a different branch. But what's funny is like either branch, there's still like, I'm still at the bank so often that everybody knows me by name. When I walk in, they're always, "Oh, I'll be with you in a sec, Mr. Hogue," because I can't go to the bank and do it on my own. If you do a wire transfer, you still have to sit down with somebody, bring your ID. If you've ever done a wire to the person you're sending money to in the past, make sure to bring the receipt. It makes it so much easier for them to do the next wire, because they can just look at what already worked in the past and it matches up with the fields they have to key in. And it's much easier. So that's a little pro tip when you're doing wire transfers. But anyways, for me, it's a $40 flat fee every time I do a wire. And when I'm wiring big amounts of money, that's typically, it works out to be a small percentage of the money that I'm sending. So it's definitely not something to worry about too much. It's just part of doing business also. So cons about doing wire transfers: there's no buyer protection, and it can take up to 10 days for the recipient to get your money. However, in my experience, it's typically 1 to 3 days. Also, another con I could have mentioned is that like there's a window of time during the day, and also depends on your account type. At least I'm speaking to my knowledge from using Capital One, where you can only send a wire internationally between, I think it's like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that's if you have a business account. If you don't have a business account, it might be like 10 to 2, just so you guys know. All right, then talking about PayPal, again, extremely easy to use, and there's security for buyers, but again, comes at a cost because they're tacking on that around 4% flat rate fee to all the money they send. Also, don't assume that, you know, you can pretty much assume that any supplier that you find on like Alibaba that's doing manufacturing for international clients accepts wire transfers. They'll send you their bank account information when you request a pro forma invoice. it's very rare that someone says, hey, PayPal me the money. Typically, you're asking them if you can PayPal, not the other way around, just so you guys know. And then Alibaba Secure Payment is also probably the second most common to wire transfers. And I just thought to myself, like, well, what about Western Union? Yeah, guys, real quick, if anybody's asking you to Western Union them money, just immediately like ignore them, block them, and don't talk to them. We'll talk about Western Union in a second. But Alibaba Secure Payment is extremely easy to use. It's basically Alibaba's version of PayPal. They offer buyer security and hold the money in escrow until you approve the order. The downside of Alibaba Secure Payment is that their fees are higher than PayPal's at around 5%, although it's charged to the supplier. However, guys, guess what happens when a 5% fee is given to the supplier? They pass it on to you, the buyer. So it's going to come back to us regardless. Anytime you get to make a nice big international payment from the comfort of your own home, you're most likely paying for it somehow, some way. Also, it's worth noting too, this could be an additional con, but like, you know, if your credit limit's not that high and you're sending, you know, a payment for getting some products manufactured, maybe it's like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 more. It could be more. I mean, I've wired 30 grand. I don't have a 30 grand credit limit on my business credit card right now. You know, I'm close, but I don't have that. So I'd have to do it via wire, which means that like if I tried to do Alibaba Secure Payment, that requires a credit card. That would not work. They might actually like let you wire to I don't know the exact ins and outs. I've only used it a handful of times, and every time I've just used my business credit card. But when you're deciding, guys, just go with what you prefer, I guess. I mean, your supplier should give you options. Most likely they're going to direct you towards the wire transfer. Also, when you send money internationally, if it's your first time transacting with the recipient of the funds, I would say do the 30% upfront, 70% after products were manufactured splits. After that, though, you know they're legit. I typically go ahead and send the 100% cost up front. The pro is you only have to pay the transaction fee one time. So if it's a wire transfer fee and it's a flat rate, you're saving yourself from paying that again. Also, I should mention that, you know, years into this game, I've never been scammed. So for me, it's working just fine. Again, that's if you've dealt with the supplier before. If it's your first time, you're probably better off doing the 30%, 70% method. And if the amount of the order is small enough, or maybe just the 30% is small enough, you could ask them to PayPal the money and then wire them the 70%. Most of the time, they're flexible, guys. And then last but not least, money transfer methods to avoid. Definitely avoid Western Union. This is not that everybody that wants to use Western Union is scamming, but like Western Union is what scammers use. So it's best to just avoid it. Also, letters of credit. It's just, there's too much paperwork involved for that to be a viable solution. Your time is money. Remember that. So using a letter of credit is just not a good approach. All right, guys. And that pretty much wraps it up for this video. Just to recap, I really recommend using wire transfers for the common transfer of money internationally. Your bank will also take care of any conversions and all that. PayPal's great for international payments of small amounts. And if your supplier prefers Alibaba Secure Payment and you have the credit on your credit card to pay, that also works just as well. And that's it, guys. So if you like this video, please hit that like button. Please consider subscribing. Any questions, comments, or feedback, hit me up below, and I'll see you at the next one.